You know, I was watching some comic dramas, dubs, if you will, on the Archie Sonic. And basically, one of them that stuck out to me that I wanted to check out because with these comic dramas, they do a good job on certain stories and everything to bring them to life, kind of like those motion comics and stuff, and everything that Marvel and DC bring out officially. Well, I was, just out of curiosity, I want to check out once again the House of Cards comic dub and everything. So I looked it up, and of course, my, I guess you could say, upgraded request review that I did back in the early 2010s, late 2000s, if you will, came up. And of course, the up conversion I did last year, basically combining the two together, because I think I did it in two parts, so I decided to just piece it together into one up converted story and such. And basically, long story short, I just wanted to check out, the comic drama again, because basically when you get to House of Cards, it is pretty much the equivalent, a very small equivalent to what Marvel wanted to do with, what Marvel was doing in the comics at the time with Civil War. Just a small little snippet, of Archie Sonic's take on it, if you will. And I know I say that a lot in my videos, if you will, so I do apologize for saying it again. But anyway, it was just a small snippet, like a small, I guess you could say, take on what Marvel was doing at that time. And the reason it's also very, I guess you could say, iconic in a way, despite the fact that it was only 2 issues, if you will, was due to the fact that it was highlighted by the fight between Sonic and Tails. And the reason it was highlighted by this is because this was a fight that, from a storyline perspective, had been building and building and building towards for months, for several issues. Mostly you go back to around, like 156, I think 155, 156, when Tails discovers Sonic making out with Fiona in the forest outside of Knothole. And he gets upset about this and tells Sonic he hates him and then runs off crying. That right there was pretty much, the foundation of what was, inevitably going to be this face-off. And that's exactly, in the long run, what the end result was. The reason why Tails had all this pent-up frustration and anger and stuff and all that, resentment towards Sonic, the way he did. I mean, sure, there were cooling off periods here and there where you could probably say, well, maybe it's a change in writers, maybe storyline wise, Tails is putting it to the side because that's not important right now. The safety of the planet's important and things like that, and that might be true. That might be entirely true. But when you look at House of Cards as a whole, basically, it wasn't just Tails, situation with Sonic that was coming to a boil, but it was also what was hinted at, a little bit in I think it was 176, I believe, I think it was 176, 177, around that, like, when the character, I think it was 176, right? When Nicole helped Sonic and Knuckles and Tails free everybody and take them to this new nanite built version of of New Mobotropolis, basically a more modern techno based, nanite based version of their old home and stuff. So yeah, basically the seeds had been planted since that time, since that issue, when Amadeus basically, who is Tails' father, basically gave off the vibes of, hey, soon we won't have to worry about this, royal body, governing, over us, the way they are, or something like that. There was kind of like a little Easter egg, a little hint in 176 that something was, gonna become an issue. And sure enough, about 2 issues later, it all comes to a boil. Basically, Amadeus has this belief of, look, we don't need royalty telling us what to do and how to live our lives. We should be able to do it on our own. We should be able to make our own decisions, or at least have people there that represent us, in allowing us to make our own decisions and stuff like that. So yeah, long story short, even though it's for a brief period, just a couple of issues, obviously I guess you could say the little hints were dropped that something was going to go down, and it did. And it just happened to coincide with what's going to happen with Tails and Sonic. Now, Tails' involvement here is the fact that, he has his parents back after so long, and of course, having them back after so long, he's going to want to defend them. He was going to want to stand up for them and everything, and all that. And basically, Sonic being very questionable about Tails' dad's actions and all that, just adds to, the tension that, Tails still has, like the frustration, the anger that he's trying to keep within for Sonic. It just adds to that, and it keeps it just, it keeps helping it, I guess you could say, froth them to the top, if you will, froth to the top, if you will. That's not what I'm looking for. Froth to the top. So, especially the way, Sonic reacts to it and everything. And, of course, when Sonic does confront, Amadeus and Rosemary, because Rosemary goes with Tails to break him out and everything, which even surprises Nicole, because this is not Tails. This is like, why would you do this? And everything. When Sonic basically tells him, hey, don't worry about Tails. Tails, he worships the ground I walk on. That right there, not knowing that Tails was right behind him, is enough to basically set him off. And, away to the races we went. And, of course, you have the situation with Amadeus wanting to, well, not necessarily, as we find out later, overthrow the royal family, but basically get them to understand, look, we get it. You're royalty. You're the king. You're the queen. You're the prince. You're the princess. We get that. But you have to let us, or people that represent us, decide how we live our lives. You have to let us decide what's right and what's wrong and stuff like that. So basically, like I said, with Tails and Sonic, off to the races we went, and with Amadeus, he basically, we find out, like I said, like I mentioned, he didn't want to go about it the way he was doing, but he felt like he had no choice. And Elias, basically wanting to honor his dad's wishes, as the new king, because his dad was in no condition physically or mentally to rule, felt, honor bound to defend the right of the family. And of course, with Amadeus and Sally, it takes Nicole being, as some people say, cheeky, about it, by essentially telling, Sally what's going on, and not Elias's parents, not Elias and Sally's parents, because she's like, yeah, Elias, Your Majesty, I do agree. Excuse me, though. She's like, Elias, Your Majesty, I did agree that I would not awake your parents, but you didn't tell me I couldn't wake your sister. So having Sally come in and basically be the voice of reasoning, I should say, and basically telling them from her own experience that, she understands where both are coming from, so that, so she could, basically say, look, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, Elias. I get what you're saying, Amadeus. But fighting is not the resolution. It's not the direction we need to go, which both do kind of agree with. And Sally's like, good. Since we got that out of the way, let's talk. And then that's how the decision of, we can do a council, with the agreement that the king's on the council, with the king basically kind of like, in a sense, having the final say, or basically being the one going like, everybody in favor of this, say aye, and, aye or nay, and, there you go. So, yeah, again, the whole Amadeus Elias situation was resolved basically by Nicole, excuse me, being a little sneaky Lynx, if you will, going behind Elias's back and saying, yeah, or at least, well, not going behind his back, but finding a loophole saying, yeah, you said not to wake your parents, but you didn't say anything about your sister. And, again, Sally coming in and basically talking to them and using her experience as, being acting ruler and being, a person of the people, walking among the people. She has an understanding of where both are coming from. So that's why she was able to help them come up with that compromise of, yeah, we could do this royal council, Senate, if you will, with you, as kind of like the final say, or you the one asking for yay or nay in agreement. And there you go. There you go. Although some of the decisions, for council members, fans do agree to this day, was kind of iffy. Like, Rosemary, you can kind of like be, okay, she's Tails' mom, so she kind of has connections there. Hamlin, that's, things, it's like there were certain members that were good decisions, some not so good, and some like Rosemary kind of in between. Like Rosemary could understand from both areas, okay, I get where the king's coming from, but I also get where the people I represent come from, and there you go. But getting back to Sonic and Tails, again, that was the highlight of this entire two-parter and what was being built up to, mainly because, again, when Sonic's telling Amadeus and Rosemary before they're able to escape the detention center that, hey, Tails worships the ground he walks on, and then that basically sets Tails off to attack him from behind. You get this fight, not just within the detention center, but outside of it now, as well, but outside of it as well, as they're racing through the forest, racing through, the forest area, I should say, of New Mobotropolis. And you have Sonic, going like, man, what's gotten into you, Tails? I don't get it. What's the deal? It's like, I understand, because basically Sonic's like, look, I understand you want to defend your parents, you defend your dad, I get that, but this is taking it too far. It's like, what's going on here? It's like because basically Sonic's, he's essentially caught off guard, like, why are you basically, taking, what's with all this anger? It's like, why are you taking everything I taught you and skewing it? And when he gets to that part, when during this scuffle, when Sonic gets to that part, when he's bringing up, the fact that Tails is taking everything that Sonic taught him and skewing it, that's when Tails basically says, basically gives him the answer that, when people saw this moment, it's like, yes, we now kind of get a full circle moment. Yes, this is kind of a good indication of storytelling, going all the way back to that moment in 155, 156, if you will, where Tails discovered Sonic and Fiona making out. It goes all the way back to that. This is an example, despite how you feel about it, of good storytelling, because when Sonic brings up the fact that, hey, you're taking everything, I taught you and skewing it, or I helped to teach you and skewing it, Tails' answer of, oh, so you dated Fiona to help me? Which, again, despite how you might take that a revelation as part of his anger, if not the legit core heart of his anger towards Sonic, despite how you feel about that, again, that is good storytelling, because this has been festering, this has been boiling within Tails for quite some time. And when Sonic, his reaction being like, well, so when Sonic hears this come out of Tails' mouth, as his answer, and Sonic's reaction is like, wait a minute, she's what this is all about? Tails, of course, he just lets it all out, emotionally, tears and everything. He just starts swinging wildly and says, he's like, don't you dare say that. You knew I loved her, but you knew I loved her, and you still went out with her. And, and he brings up in this anger, he brings up, the frustration of, but basically, hold on for a second. Sorry, I had to get some coffee there. But during this moment where he's finally letting all this emotion, all this anger coming out, tears and everything, he brings up the, automation of the automation version of Fiona that he met. And, he brings up that Fiona chose Scourge over him, but despite all that, Sonic knew he loved Fiona, and he still went out with her. But then outside of that, he also brings up everything else. He brings up, everything I've ever cared about, you take away. Hey, and everything. Like not believing him about his adventures, with the down under freedom fighters and the 3-part Tales adventures and things like that. So finally getting the answer that I think he and all of us have been wondering about, we as viewers, as readers, knew about, but finally getting those answers that he, and I'm sure in continuity, and in story that the other freedom fighters wanted about why Tails had acted so, off kilter at times towards Sonic. Sonic's like, okay, man, you feel that way? I get it. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to stand here and let you beat the hell out of me. Yeah. Well, he doesn't say it in that sense. He says, basically he says, hey, if you feel like that, go ahead. I'll stand here, go to town. He's basically telling Tails, hey, you want to beat me up, take your frustrations out, beat me to a bloody pulp, go for it. I'm not going to hold back. And the reason he's not going to hold back and everything, and despite Tails thinking, you're trying to trick me and everything, Sonic does admit his faults. Sonic says, look, I was wrong in what I did. He admits that, look, the reason I dated Fiona is because I knew that, despite how much you would try, there's no way she'd want to go out with you because you were younger. And that he believed going out with her would resolve that problem. Basically, help Tails get over the crush. But in him not really thinking it through, it only infuriated Tails, only angered Tails to the point that we got to now. That basically, instead of thinking, okay, if I ask Fiona to go out with me and we become an item, maybe I should consult it with Tails and say, look, Tails, I'm going to date Fiona. I know you have a thing for her, but let's be real. I don't think there's no way she'll ever go out with you. So why don't you let me go out with her and maybe over time convince her to maybe give you a chance or something like that. Or maybe with her find somebody that she knows of that's Tails' age, and that could be the end of that. But anyway, the thing is, Sonic does show maturity here by taking responsibility for what he's done, because basically at the end of the day, Sonic was a jerk. Honestly, he was a jerk. He was, again, people might say, well, he had his heart in the right place a little bit to help Tails avoid, any possible heartache in anything that Fiona may, give him by rejection. Yeah, you might say that, but again, this is Sonic we're talking about, and different interpretations throughout the years and decades have shown, outside of the video games, different interpretations have shown that he doesn't always think straight. Like, again, his heart might be in the right, in the right place, but the reality is, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed. So for him to say, hey, hey, and admit, hey, I thought what I was doing was the right thing and everything, and also kind of admitting that he didn't realize that, hey, it was going to trigger this anger in Tails. For him to admit that being his fault, basically not thinking it through, is a smart decision. So, yeah, they do make up and everything. At the end, though, after he does admit that and admit the other things he's done wrong towards Tails, taking credit for stuff that, Tails was more responsible for and not believing him when he actually did certain things, they have to apologizing for all that and everything. The two do make up. Tails does say he wants to still talk things out, and probably not just with Sonic, but with the others like Sally and Rhoda and Bunny and all them. So at the end of the day, House of Cards, in my opinion, I know others feel a little differently. And that's fine. You feel a little differently. That's fine. At the end of the day, I thought House of Cards was a decent story. I thought it was an okay story for the characters, because Again, you have this full circle moment. Sorry about that. But you have this full circle moment, storytelling wise, with Tails and Sonic, and mostly Tails, because all this anger, all this, frustration and disdain and all that for what Sonic had done and what he was trying to do, just kept, that kept festering, finally just came to a boil point. And obviously we knew what the core issue was. We knew what the core issue was at the heart of all that for Tails, and that was Sonic dating Fiona. And like I said, the way Sonic admitted it, in a way, he thought, hey, he believed he was doing the right thing, when in fact we all know that maybe what he should have done is date Fiona for a little bit, or go out with her, talk to her, maybe even try to convince her and say, look, I know Tails is a little younger than you by a few years, but love, and this would kind of be based in real life too, let's be honest, kind of be based in real life. You could have Sonic talk to her and be like, look, Tails has a crush on you, or has a thing for you, and I know he's a few years younger, but maybe if you give him a chance, or maybe say, look, we could be close friends and all that, and when you get older, maybe we could try, try something. If Sonic would have gone that route, I honestly, from a story context, he would have avoided this entire thing. Like, can you imagine a moment where Fiona would be like going up to Tails and saying, Tails, what are you doing right now? Do you got any plans? And you could see Tails going like, no, why? And Fiona would be like, how about I treat you to a shake at Uncle Chuck's? Just me and you. And there you go. That could have resulted, a moment where Sonic tells Fiona this and even kind of convinces her, hey, give him a chance. Maybe wait till he's a little older, perhaps by a year or two, and see what happens. It could have led to something to where they could have had a friendly little date. Gone out and had a shake or two and just get to know each other. And maybe potentially start things off there to where it's like, Fiona could be like, look, I know you have a thing for me, and that's great and everything, but let's not rush anything. Let's just start out as friends and proceed from there and see what happens. And maybe when you're older, in a year or two, we can try something. We can try something more. Basically, take steps and everything, baby steps. Which, again, from a storyline context perspective, would have made more sense. Would have helped out and avoided this entire thing between Sonic and Tails. But it would have had to start with Sonic talking to Fiona about that. If you kind of get what I'm saying. But again, outside of that what if possibility, or what could have been possibility, overall House of Cards was good because, looking back on it over 15 years later, because yes, this came out 15 years ago, believe it or not, it did. I'm not lying. This came out when I was still in Kansas. That's how old this is. That's how old this story is. And you might say, well, how did you review it when you did? It's like, how did you review it? It basically, my review for it was one of the reviews I still had. I had saved, I think, on my computer that's stored away right now in the garage. I think it was one of them that's stored on a disk or stored internally. I still had it. Basically, so I was able to recover it when I did. Yeah, I think it was one of them I had. I have to go back to when I first reviewed it. But yeah, this came out, like I said, in 2007. Believe it or not, over 15 years ago, and it's hard to believe that it's still one of those stories that, Cyberpunk Jordan about 9 months ago even talked about it and said it was one of his personal favorites, and and brought up brought up that situation with Sonic and Tails and Fiona being the reason and all that. But overall, again, looking back in it 15 years later, I still think it's a good. I think it's a nice little, I guess you can say, change of pace, because it shows that, not everything sometimes can be peaceful between the good guys, and there's always going to be a misunderstanding, and that in the case of people that consider themselves more than friends, but basically family, that sometimes, you doing what you feel is probably the best thing for your family is not always the best thing. And Sonic dating Fiona, knowing that Tails had a crush on her, had a thing for her, was in love with her, probably wasn't the best decision on Sonic's part. And, in this story, he was able to admit it. He was able to say, look, I goofed up. I was an idiot. I was dumb for what I did. So, so overall, again, like I said, the story was good. I'm not gonna knock it. Even though we had a little bit of a, teaser, a little bit of a hint of what was to come with Amadeus and such. I thought the resolution to that was good, because you have Sally coming in and basically, utilizing her experience as both acting ruler as well as being, someone that walked among her people and understood where they were coming from. So to have her kind of be that middle ground to basically, get both Elias, her brother, who was king at the time, and Amadeus to understand, look, there's a better solution to this, because I understand where both of you are coming from. And to have the Council of Acorn, despite how you feel about the members that were voted in, if you will, being the answer. Overall, I thought it was a good resolution. Sure. There were little hints even before 175 and all that kind of led to the speculation that something was going to go down. But the fact that we got that one little moment, I think, in 176 was enough for me. I think it was 176, enough for me to kind of know, yeah, something's going to happen here, and it's not going to be good. But again, the resolution I thought it was good. I thought it was a nice little touch. And Nicole, you want a little bit of a comedic moment, cute little adorable moment for Nicole, having her be a sneaky little lynx, if you will, and basically finding a loophole, in Elias's, I guess you could say, request of her of, don't wake my parents, don't let them, find out about this, but saying, yeah, you said not to and for her to basically find the loophole and say, yeah, you said not wake your parents, but you didn't say anything about your sister. And so, so to, have her find that loophole, be a sneaky little lynx and find that loophole, I thought was a cute and adorable as well for her. In her playing her part here. So overall, again, I thought the story was good and everything. Looking back at it 15 years later, it's not one of the more iconic stories, like, the dreadful. I'll say it straight. The dreadful, unnecessarily long Death Egg Mark II, World War II Mecha Sally arc. I'm not gonna say it's as iconic as that, because that's iconic for all the negative reasons, let's be honest. I'm not going to say it's as iconic as Endgame. I'm not going to say it's as iconic as the, rebooted story arcs of Return of the Freedom Fighters and Panic in the Sky. I'm not going to say that, or even Spark of Life. But I will say that it's iconic enough to where people still talk about it to this day, because of the fact that it's one of the few times you had a full circle storyline reasoning behind, a situation with primarily two characters, on the side of the heroes, and mostly those being the two more iconic Sega characters in Sonic and Tails. Some might say, well, the reasoning for Tails' anger is, flawed. Not actually, because you got to realize, again, when this started, I think Carl Bowlers and Ken Penders were still writing the book. So for them to put that in there, they knew what they were doing. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of them, if not both of them, had stayed on the book, that we wouldn't have gotten maybe something similar to what Ian was doing. Because I'm sure Ian got some notes and everything carried over to his regime when he was writing the book. So obviously he knew about this, and probably knew that, hey, they were going to do something more epic in scale or something more, crazier. And he decided, nope, I'm going to scale it down and make it more simpler. And that's what he did. Much to his credit. But in the end, like I said, I thought it was good. And looking back on it, 15 years later, it's still worth reading, in my opinion. It really is. And also, if you go on here on YouTube, or you go to YouTube, if you're listening to this on my BW Roses Discussions podcast, the audio version that is, if you go to YouTube, you go there and you can listen to the comic dubs and dramas that they did on this. Some specifically just clip out the fight between Sonic and Tails, because that is one of the more iconic moments in the story itself, because we get that resolution, full circle storytelling resolution. But overall, I thought it was good. But overall, at the end of the day, I thought it was good. I really recommend checking it out. And until next time, guys, I will talk to you all later. Like I said, you will get a audio version of this at BW Roses Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Also, check me out at VENMO at BW Roses for content you can't get here on YouTube, especially content I just uploaded yesterday. And like I said in the previous audio video podcast, when I was uploading it simultaneously alongside YouTube, it looked like my computer kind of had a bit of a hiccup. It did. It was like one of those moments where the computer decided, was on behalf of Hewlett Packard or whatever, oh, I'm going to do an update or something like that, and it just almost crashed. Thank God it didn't. Thank the Lord it didn't. But it just went into one of those scenarios where it just, I guess, a simultaneous upload doesn't really help it, especially if it comes from two different perspectives, if you know what I mean, or two different sites, if you know what I mean. But anyway, you can check me out at VENMO at BW Roses for content you can't get here on YouTube due to reasons, copyright reasons and others. You can also check me out at patreon.com, so that's BW Roses for support there, the $1, $3 tier. Also at Venmo at Brian-Walmer-2 and at Cash App at BW Roses 98 to help me out financially there. Also check me out at Divanut.com, so that's BVW1979. And support me at my Teespring store by clicking the upper left hand corner here at the end screen, depending on if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can go to the YouTube link or go to my YouTube channel and go to my Teespring store as well and support me there. It will be linked in the About section. But if you're watching this on YouTube, click on the upper left hand corner to check out my Teespring store. Also, guys, again, check me out at BW Roses Discussions, all your audio podcast locations except for Pandora. But until next time, guys, I gotta get myself ready for work. Let me know what your thoughts are on House of Cards. How did you feel about it the first time you saw it? And how do you feel about it now, 15 years later? Let me know in the comments and in the live chat, and I'll talk to y'all later.